Ah, yes, once again. See? That's all right. Thank God for help. We're going to dismiss for Children's Church right now. Amen. For everything that God is to us, Jehovah Nissi, Jehovah Rapha, all the Jehovahs that we can think of, that we can rattle off almost without thinking. He's also, most importantly, first and foremost, he is Abba Father. He is Abba Father. He is Daddy God. I used to be afraid to say Daddy God because I felt like I was being too familiar with God. But in the old saying, familiarity breeds contempt, and I don't want to ever feel like I'm so close to God, and I didn't want to feel like I'm that close that I would begin to take God for granted. But it's that very feeling of intimacy that He desires from us, from me, to be able to call Him Daddy God, to be able to have that confidence in Him to call Him Daddy God. And one of the most beautiful things about the Daddy God is the fact that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. While we were yet sinners, God made a way for us to be restored unto Him. And our restoration unto Him is ever so important. Our restoration unto Him is what He looks forward to. Even in times when we fall, in times we turn away, He wants us to come back. He gives us the parable of the prodigal son. He wants us to come back so that we can be restored. But one of the other accounts, great accounts of restoration in the Word is Peter himself. The Apostle Peter, even as he was one of the disciples, even as Christ sat and was declaring that He would have to turn Himself over to the authorities to be crucified. And Peter made the great declaration, "No, Lord, I love you more than all the rest of these. So I will go with you even unto death." He says, "Oh, Simon, Simon." But Peter, in all his exuberation and all his zeal, Christ tells him, that's all well and good, but before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. So we're just gonna walk through that a little bit through the scriptures. Let's turn real quickly to John chapter 18. John chapter 18. In verses 15 through 18, in that, I'll read 15 through 17. It says, "And Simon Peter followed, and so did another disciple, that was known unto the high priest, and went in with Jesus into the place of the high priest. But Peter stood at the door without, and then went out that other disciple, which was known unto the high priest, and spake unto her that kept the door, and brought in Peter. Then said the damsel that kept the door unto Peter, Art not thou also one of this man's disciples? And he said, I am not." Strike one. Fast forward to verse 25. "And Simon Peter stood and warmed himself. They said therefore unto him, Art thou also one of his disciples? He denied it. And he said, I am not." Strike two. "One of the servants of the high priest, being his kinsman, whose ear Peter cut off, saith, Did not I see you in the gardens with him? Peter then denied again, and immediately the cock crew. So he was identified as a follower of Christ. Not under suspicion, not that they suspected, but he was recognized. They weren't asking him because they didn't know. They were asking like, hey, aren't you one of? And he's like, no. Peter, and his third instance is even more significant because the person talking to him was a kinsman, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off. And he denies it. And the cock crowed. And so we have, and through the progression, the timeline progression, Christ is sentenced to die. He's crucified. The crucifixion experience takes place. His side is pierced. He's buried. And then in chapter 20, the resurrection takes place. Verses 1 through 10. Verse 11 starts with Jesus appearing to Mary Magdalene. And then we get to verse 19 where Jesus appears to the disciples. And I'm going to read through a few of those verses. Starting with verse 19. Then the same day at evening, being the first day of the week, when the doors were shut where the disciples were assembled for fear of the Jews, came Jesus and stood in the midst. And he said unto them, peace be unto you. And when he had so said, he showed unto them his hands and his side. Then were the disciples glad when they saw the Lord. Then said Jesus unto them, peace be unto you, as my Father has sent me, even so I send you. And when he had said this, he breathed on them. We just talked about, breathe on me. And he breathed on them and saith, receive ye the Holy Spirit. So he appeared unto them again. Well, he appeared to them in that place. They were locked up in there hiding because they feared that the Jews might come after them now that they've gotten Jesus. But they were satisfied having gotten Jesus, because if you cut the head off, the rest of the body will scatter. And that's the principle. So they were hiding, locked up in the place, and Jesus appears in their midst and shows them, and they were glad. So then we fast forward again to chapter 21. And in chapter 21, Jesus appears to the disciples again. In this particular time, there's only 7 of them who are gathered. Verse 1 says, and after these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias, and on this wise showed himself. There were together Simon Peter, and Thomas called Didymus, and Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, and the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other of his disciples. Simon Peter saith unto them, I go a fishing. And they say unto him, we also go with thee. They went forth, and they entered into a ship, and immediately and that night they caught nothing. But when the morning was now come, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples knew not that it was Jesus. Then Jesus said unto them, children, have ye any meat? And they answered him, no. And he said unto them, cast the net on the right side of the ship, and ye shall find. And they cast therefore, and now they were not able to draw it for the multitude of fishes. In verse 7, therefore, the disciple whom Jesus loved said unto Peter, it is the Lord. Now when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he girt his fisher's coat unto him, for he was naked, and did cast himself into the sea. So here they are. Jesus has appeared to them in the room. They out of fear, they were hiding from the Jews. He appears to them. He lets them know, I am alive. I'm alive. Guess what? I'm alive. They didn't win. No matter how it looks, guess what? What I said is true. This is what is real. This is the real. Showed him the holes in his hands. Showed him the piercing in his side. Doubting Thomas was shown, that you have no reason to doubt. Do not doubt. And even after all of that, you have 7 who decided to go fishing. And they went out, were out all night, caught nothing. And in the morning, which is usually about the time they would start coming in, for fishing, Jesus is on the shore, and he challenges them, try it one more time. And they tried it that one more time. And it was that, in that moment, that the disciple whom Jesus loved, who's the author of this book, and John himself, turns to Peter and says, it is the Lord. The significance of it is Peter, whom had declared his love for Jesus above everybody else's. Lord, I love you more than any of these. I will go with you unto death. No, Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times. No, Lord, I won't. Aren't you one of his disciples? No. Weren't you with him? No. But didn't we see you? No. Cock-a-doodle-doo. So in their locked up shelter, Jesus appears. And even after that, they decide, okay, let's go fishing. Let's go fishing. They caught nothing. They come back. They're getting ready to come back. Jesus says, cast the net on the other side. And then now they don't have enough fish. And then John looks and says, this is Jesus. It's Jesus. And the significance is that he told Peter. He didn't make an announcement to everybody. Hey, it's the Lord. He turns to Peter and says, that's Jesus. That's Jesus. And so Peter, it says he girts himself. He clothes himself because he was fishing out there naked, but that just meant naked. And this meant he taken off his outer garments in order to, carry out the duties and deeds of the fishing, casting the nets and pulling the nets in and everything. So he girded himself back up and he swam to shore to meet Jesus. There was his excitement. He couldn't even wait. They're pulling in these fish and they don't. It's difficult that they could barely get the fish in. And John says, "This is Jesus," and he's not even worried about pulling the fish in anymore. He dives in and swims to meet Jesus. So the rest of them come in. They bring the fish. They have dinner. Actually, breakfast because it was in the morning. And they have a little fish for breakfast. And this is the account of Peter being restored by Jesus. Whereas Peter denied Jesus 3 times, Jesus restored Peter with 3 exaltations to serve. Do you love me? Yes, Lord. Feed my lambs. Do you love me? Yes, Lord. Feed my sheep. Do you love me? Yes, Lord. Feed my sheep. So for every denial, a declaration. Wow. 1 for 1. 3 for 3. For every denial, a declaration. Do you love me? because his denial came after a declaration of love. I love you more than any of the rest of these. No, you're going to deny me. No, I won't. Yeah, you will. Cock-a-doodle-doo. Do you love me? Yes. Do you love me? Yes. Do you love me? And Peter was even getting frustrated at a certain point. Lord, you know I love you. So he tells him, feed my lambs, feed my sheep, and feed my sheep. Then he, after the restoration, he tells him that basically he's going to die a martyr's death. Because in verse 18 he says, Verily, verily, I say unto thee, when thou wast young, thou girdest thyself, and thou walkest whither thou wouldest. But when thou shalt be old, thou shalt stretch out thy hands, and another shall gird thee and carry thee whither thou wouldest not. And in all of that, he's basically saying, you're going to die a martyr's death. You're going to die a martyr's death. And that's if you love me, serve me. If you love me, feed my sheep. If you love me, feed my lambs. But in all the times I've read this, something really stuck out to me in verse 19. This spake he, signifying by what death he should glorify God. He let Peter know that in this death, dying this way, you are going to glorify God. Even in your death, you're going to glorify God. Serve me. The last part of verse 19, John 21:19. And when he had spoken this, he said unto him, follow me. Follow me. Do you love me? Feed my lambs. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. You're going to die a martyr's death, but follow me. What's the significance of follow me? What does that mean? Turn to Matthew 4 and verse 19. Better yet, I'm going to start with verse 18. And Jesus, walking by the Sea of Galilee, saw two brethren, Simon called Peter and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishers. And he said unto them, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. So in order to restore Peter, he called him with the very words that he used to call him into the discipleship in the beginning. In order to restore Peter. He said, Peter, I must go. No, Lord, you will not. I love you more than these. I will go with you even unto death. You're going to deny me 3 times. No, I won't. Yes, you will. Cock-a-doodle-doo. Do you love me? Yes, feed my lambs. Do you love me? Yes, feed my sheep. Do you love me? Yes, feed my sheep. But you're going to die a martyr's death. But follow me. Follow me. There, in that is the restoration. Going all the way back full circle to the beginning. Follow me and I will make you fishers of men. Follow me and I will make you fishers of men. Follow me and I will teach you how to draw men unto me. And in the restoration, do you love me? Feed my lambs. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. Restoration. Taking what he called them to do, and I will make you fishers of men. And bring it up to the next dimension. I won't even say next level anymore, because I heard an excellent teaching that says levels have limitations. Levels have limitations. Levels are floors on a building, which by construction laws and stuff can only be so high anyway. Levels have limitations, but dimensions are in the spiritual, and dimensions have no limitations. So when Peter is restored by Christ, he takes him back to the beginning, but he's bringing it into a new dimension. He's taking him from now just catching fish to now feeding fish, feeding lambs. Because the catching part and bringing them in, okay, that's important. But once you get them in, they need to be fed. They go from fish being brought in with the net to lambs being led by a shepherd. Lambs that need feeding. Sheep that need feeding. Sheep that need leading. Sheep that need guiding. Sheep that need protection. So the restoration. Now, I like using an example when I talk about restoration. The example of taking an old car. You take an old car and you're going to restore an old car because that old car has been beaten down by time. It's been dilapidated by time. The paint, all the finishings, all the interior may be deteriorated, but that old car, somebody looks at that old car and that old car still has value. Somebody, when they look at that beat down, dilapidated old car, says, I can restore this. And you take your resources now and you invest in what is necessary to restore that car. You might go to the manufacturer to find some parts. You may go to other enthusiasts to find parts. You may go wherever. But the parts that you're putting in now are brand new parts that are from a different era, that are better than the original parts that were put in. Now you might get the factory leather seats now. If it had a convertible top, you take that old ratty one off and you put a new one on. And now in its restored condition, it is better than when it was when it originally came off the line. See, when God restores, when Jesus restores, he puts us back better than we were in the original. When he restores us. How is that true? How is that proof? It's proved in our salvation. Because the relationship in the garden wasn't the intended end. God knew everything that was going to be, but his plan was originally that we be saved and have a untamperable relationship with him through Christ Jesus. That we had to fall in order to be restored. Brought back to better than it was before. You see, when it was in the garden, it could be spoiled, and it got spoiled. Because the enemy was mad. The enemy was angry. The enemy was trying to go after and take away. He was trying to take away from God what he had created. But to those of us who walk in restoration, the enemy can't touch us. He can't take us. He can't steal us from. He's out to steal, kill, and destroy, but he can't steal, kill, and destroy us. So he's trying to steal our identity. He's trying to kill our relationship. He's trying to destroy our faith in God. So he's trying to steal, kill, and destroy. But he can't because we're restored. Because we're restored. And Peter, think about it. Peter denied Christ. A blatant and intentional denial to preserve himself. A straight up denial. Aren't you one of his? No. But all three times, a pointed question. Simple yes or no. And he gave the simple yes or no. No, I'm not. I'm not. And again, they weren't asking him because they were looking for somebody. They were asking him because they recognized him. He was recognized. He was identified as a follower. You couldn't be that close of a follower of Jesus and have him go through everything that he was going through at that time and not be recognized. He was part of the entourage, if you will. One of Jesus' people. So he was easily recognizable, because where Jesus was, Peter was. The other 12, for that matter, the other 11, for that matter, they were there. But because Peter was out there, and there was another disciple that was with him as well. But there's no mention of him getting recognized. There's no mention of him getting challenged or asked about, aren't you a follower? Dig that. Find that interesting. But in the garden, Peter was the one who hacked the ear off. Just by Peter and his personality, Peter wasn't aiming for an ear. He was a fisherman. He wasn't a master swordsman. Peter was looking to split somebody's wig right down the middle. And the guy just got out of the way just enough to where it didn't split his wig, but it got the ear. So again, Peter was not a master swordsman like that. He wasn't trying to make a point. He was trying to drive a point through something. So by that, yes, you're going to be easily recognized. But Christ takes Peter through all the steps of restoration. For every denial, he gives Peter an opportunity to make a declaration. Do you love me? Yes, I do. If you love me, feed my lambs. Do you love me? Yes, I do. Then feed my sheep. And do you love me? Yes, I do. Then feed my sheep. Then again, he brings it up to the next dimension. Follow me. Follow me. Verse 20, it says, Then Peter, turning about, seeth the disciple whom Jesus loved following, which also leaned on his breast at supper, and said, Lord, is he that betrayeth thee? Which is he that betrayeth thee? And Peter, seeing him, saith to the Lord Jesus, And what shall this man do? And Jesus said, If I will that he tarry until I come back, what is that to thee? Follow thou me. Chapter 21. John chapter 21, sorry. Again, verse 22, Jesus saith unto him, If I will that he tarry till I come, what is that to do with thee? Follow thou me. Don't be worried about what his end is going to be. That's not your concern. Your concern is to follow me. I've restored you now. I've brought you back to the beginning, brought it into a new dimension. I've given you your instructions. Now you follow me. Now you do what I've called you to do. Now that you've been restored, take advantage of that restoration and go forward and do what it is now that I've called you to do. I've brought you to making you a fisher of men. I've trained you and equipped you to that. Now that I'm crucified and resurrected, now we're at the next dimension. Now you got to feed the sheep. Now you got to feed the lambs. You said you love me, right? And this is not a to show me that you love me thing. This is a because you love me thing. I'm not saying show me. I'm not saying prove it. I'm not from Missouri. I'm not telling you show me. Missouri is the show me state. That's so. But Jesus is not saying that. I'm not telling you to show me. I'm not telling you to prove it to me. He says, if you love me, because you love me, do this. Because you love me. Do this. And don't be distracted by what other believers are or aren't going through. Don't be distracted by the fact that your life isn't going like another believer's life. Don't be distracted by the fact that somebody else appears to have it easier than you. Don't be distracted by the fact that somebody else appears to have it harder than you. Don't be distracted. What has that to do with thee? Follow thou me. Do what I've asked you to do. Do what I've commanded you to do. Follow thou me. Don't get caught up. Don't fall into the trap. Don't fall into the trap of comparison. Don't fall into the trap of, why me? Why would it have to be me? Why? What make me? No, don't fall into that trap. Avoid that trap. It's out there. It's not even hidden. It's right out there in the middle of the road. Don't jump into it. Any more than you see a bear trap sitting out there, you would not go stick your leg into that because you know it's going to hurt. At the bare minimum, it's just going to hurt. At the worst case scenario, it's going to sever your leg. Don't fall into that trap. But that's what we do as believers. Satan lays that trap right out there. It's not even hidden. Jesus has warned us about it. But certain situations come up, certain circumstances come up, and we run and jump right into that trap like it was made for us, like Jesus put it there, which he did not. He warned us not to go there. He warned us not to get on that path. But we run to that path because we get distracted. We get distracted by what we're going through that others aren't going through. By what others aren't going through that we're going through. We get distracted. Avoid the trap. It's a Domino's Pizza used to have that commercial, avoid the Noid. Avoid the Noid. Avoid the trap. Stay out of the trap. Stay away from the trap. What is that to do with you? You follow me. Because if you follow Christ, guess what? Christ isn't laying any traps out there. He's not laying traps. In fact, he's ordering your steps because the steps of a righteous man are ordered by God. Right? That straight and narrow path. That we're called to be on. No traps. No traps. The enemy, because the word says no weapon formed against us shall prosper. So the enemy might be able to slip one in there. But guess what? Right over it. Around it however you want to get. Whatever you want to do. But you don't have to worry about it because you're following Christ. In fact, Christ will point it out. Don't fall into that. Step over that. Go around that. He'll warn us because we're following him. Because he's the good shepherd. And the good shepherd leads out of. He leads us around. Follow thou me. Verse 23 in chapter 21. And then went this saying abroad among the brethren that that disciple should not die. Look how quickly it spread. Look how quickly it spread. What if I should? He didn't even say that he would. He didn't even say that John would. In 21, chapter 21, verse 22, he says, if I will that he tarry until I come. He didn't even say that John would. He said, if. And they took that and ran with it. Oh, he's not going to die. Oh, wow. He's not going to die. Oh, man. And Jesus again, at the end of verse 21, Jesus said said not unto him, yet Jesus said not unto him, he shall not die. But if I will that he tarry until I come, what is that to thee? John himself is saying that Jesus didn't say that. But it took no time at all for that to spread. It took no time at all for that to spread. So we got to be careful, because it doesn't say it took any time for there was no buzz created by "Do you love me? Feed my sheep." There was no buzz created. Do you love me? Feed my lambs. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. There was no commotion created by that. There was no buzz created by that. There was no buzz created when he told him, you're going to die a martyr's death. There was no buzz. Because he told Peter, you're going to die a martyr's death. Because, again, with them, oh, he's not talking to me. He's talking to Peter. They might have been thinking, whew, Whew. I'm glad he's talking to Peter now. Man, I don't want to be dying no martyr's death. That's hard stuff, boy. Shoot, I don't know if I want to go through all that, but that's Peter. Whew. And they're like, "Amen, Peter. All right, God, we praying for you, brother." But as soon as John is mentioned, and Jesus didn't even make a declarative statement. He said, "If I would." And that wasn't even the whole point of it. The point of it was, even if I declare that he would, what is that to do with you? Why are you concerned about it? Don't you be concerned about that. And they immediately took the opposite of the message that Jesus was putting out there, took the opposite of the message and ran with it. The opposite of the message. Jesus is saying, don't be concerned about it. But they took it, and now it's buzzing in all their ears. John's not going to die. John's not going to die. John's not going to die. Buzz, 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 buzz. John's not going to die. John's not going to die. Really? Not even seconds. Not even seconds. But Jesus saying, yes, you love me. I receive that love. But I need you to do this because you love me. Not to prove your love. Not to prove your love. But because you love me. Feed my lambs, feed my sheep, feed my sheep. And each one has its own definition and meaning. We're not going to go into today. But each one had its own meaning behind it. Because Jesus is not repetitive. He's not redundant. But he's commissioning, he's calling, he's petitioning unto Peter, saying, if you love me, do this for me. Not to prove your love, but because you love me. And in the end, you're going to die this death. But guess what? Follow me anyway. Follow me anyway. Follow me anyway. Because in the way of Christ, when we follow Christ, we don't fear the snares and the traps that the enemy sets. Because they're out there. And Jesus even warns about the trap of comparison. He warns about the trap of being concerned about everybody else but ourselves. He warns us about that trap. And that's a pretty serious and significant trap that can get us spun out, forgetting what our purpose is. We've gone from being fishers of men to feeders of sheep, following Christ, avoiding traps. What has that to do with you? Follow me. Don't be concerned about what everybody else is going through, what everybody else is not going through, what you're going through that everybody else is not going through. Don't be concerned about all that. Don't let that distract you. Because when that distracts you, that's when you fall into that bear trap. That's when you fall into that hole. In the Vietnam War, there were these traps that they would set. And it was a pit dug, and they would have sharp sticks coming up out of, planted in the bottom of them, and it would be covered with sticks and bamboo, and if you walked over it, you'd fall down into that pit. And if you weren't careful, your eye wasn't carefully trained to pick those kind of things out, you're going to fall into that pit. But that's why Jesus tells us to follow him. Because in Vietnam, they had the squadrons, they had what's called a point man, and the point man would go ahead. And he would point out those kind of things. He would look out. He would look for traps. He would look for snipers. He would, he'd be watching out for. And if he saw something, he would point it out. If he saw a sniper, he would signal back to the troop or whatever. But he was the point man. Jesus is our point man. He says, "Follow me." That squadron didn't do anything. If the point man held up the hand to stop, they stopped. The point man did this. They went forward. Jesus is our point man. Follow him. We can't be concerned about what everybody else. All we got to be concerned about is what God has asked us to do. And that's the best we can do. That's the best we can do. Don't be concerned about any of that. Peter's restoration put him back in a place better than when he was originally called. When we fall, when we stumble, be restored. Be restored. Declare your love for God. Ask forgiveness. Receive it. And move on. Follow Christ. Get back on track. Get back following Christ. Get back following Christ. Because God is, he's the master restorer. He's looking for it. He's looking for it. He's the car enthusiasts. They're not, they're not looking for the shiny brand new cars. They're looking for the old beat down, run down ones, because they enjoy the restoration process, watching it go from useless, dilapidated, saving it from the scrap heap, to making it useful again, giving it value. They might keep it, they might sell it, but there's the whole process of watching it go from a rusty frame on blocks to bringing it back to being a viable, shiny, new, fully operational, roadworthy vehicle. God took us off the scrap heap. Whenever we fall, he's going to restore us. We just got to turn to him. Be restored. And once we're restored, do what it is that we're intended to do. Do what it is that the Master intends for us to do. Amen. Be ye restored. Give God some praise today.